Adjourned once more, retrial of former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak pushed to October 19th. Somali women empowered to ward off sexual assault. And at a crossroad, we examine why many youth in Zimbabwe are not ready to take up leadership. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, where we bring you African and global news from all perspectives. I'm Famida Miller. It's 8 p.m. here in Nairobi, Kenya. Now, also coming up in the next half hour. Electronics headache. We tell you how Uganda plans to deal with e-waste management. And don't count me out yet. Johan Crinier sets his sights on Rio 2016 Olympic glory. We begin in North Africa, where the retrial of former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak has been postponed yet again. He's facing charges of corruption and ordering the killings of protesters during the popular revolt that ousted him in 2011. The case is now scheduled to begin on October 19th. CCTV's Adil Maruhi has this report.
Egypt's former chief of intelligence is the first in a list that includes 4 other top security officials who will testify in Mubarak's trial when it resumes in October. During the session on Saturday, the court appointed 3 committees to aid its investigations in 2 corruption cases and the killing of protesters.
It was the defense request for the corruption cases to show the court that the machine guns used during the uprising were not to attack protesters. They went to protect the police stations.
Outside the court, it was quiet. Few of Mubarak's supporters stood to show support for the former president.
We have been coming here since the beginning, and we will continue until the truth is revealed and the president declared innocent.
And despite the absence of the civil rights lawyers, 3 of the victims' families attended.
I'm
coming to support justice. Even if the case is not being held here, Mubarak must be proven guilty. Our children died to preserve our dignity. We cannot let go of their principles now.
This is not the remarkable hall that has hosted Mubarak's trial. According to the judge, renovations are taking place to be able to accommodate the increasing number of cases. For security purposes, the police academy will also host Morsi's trial and the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood. Starting October 19th, Mubarak trial will be held on a daily basis. The first 3 sessions will not be covered by the media because the court will hear the testimony of high-ranking security officials. But within the next few months, the fate of the former president will finally be clear. Adil Maharoui, CCTV, Cairo.
Meanwhile, 1 month after security forces moved into clear-out camps supporting ousted Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi, protests have continued in Cairo as well as some provinces. This is despite the extension of a curfew. Security forces have been blocking vital routes from protesters to prevent them from setting up a new sit-in.
After Friday prayers, Muslim Brotherhood supporters staged rallies in different parts of Egypt. They said this is to commemorate the people killed in the clearing of Rabba al-Adawiya Square on August the 14th. They held the pictures of Morsi with 4 fingers, which became a symbol of the Rabba al-Adawiya sit-in. Slogans were chanted against the army chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who led the overthrow of Mohamed Morsi on July the 3rd. The fresh protests come as Morsi was remanded in custody for another 30 days. He faces charges of jailbreak, murder, as well as spying for the Palestinian Hamas movement, according to the official news agency Menas. The deposed president is accused of communicating with Hamas during upheaval in January 2011 when ex-president Hosni Mubarak was toppled. Friday's protests also come 1 month after severe clashes broke out between the police forces and Muslim Brotherhood supporters. More than 600 people were killed then at Al-Nada Square and Rabba al-Adawiya Square, where leaders of Muslim Brotherhood have sought refuge since the ouster of Morsi. Well, 1 month on, the protests continued, though on a much smaller scale. According to the Ministry of Health, 1 person died and a dozen others got injured in Friday's protests. Friday's curfew started at 7 p.m, but the protests went on and the march extended for almost 100 meters. Egypt has now extended its state of emergency by 2 months, which was first imposed also on August the 14th. Jin Keo, CCTV.
Well, for the latest on the situation in Egypt, I'm now joined by our correspondent Adil Marui, who's in Cairo. Adil, let's begin with Hosni Mubarak's retrial, which has again been postponed. What distinguishes this trial from the earlier one?
Well, basically there were several issues going on. The first is that the preparation that the police academy is undergoing to have extra cell inside the court and to divide the main session. You know, the police academy was never a courtyard or a headquarters for a courthouse, but because it has a very high security facilities, it was used or turned to a court by the officials to maintain the tight, secure area to keep Mubarak safe. The same will go, and now we are expecting that after 2 sessions without any appearance for Mohammed Morsi and the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood, that within the coming few days they will start appearing when the police academy is ready. But concentrating on Mubarak's trial itself, what happened today is basically the end of any prolonged procedures. So within the coming 30 days, the committees that were formed will give their evaluation to the court, whether Mubarak did get paid money or did abuse his powers in retrieving some real estate villas in Sharm el-Sheikh, whether the price of exporting gas to Israel, which he is accused of selling it with a very low rate, and then his business partner, believed to be a businessman here, Hussein Salem, sold it to Israel and other countries with higher prices than the margin he made money for himself. All of this will be cleared by the committee, and then afterwards the trial will start and will go on for consecutive daily basis until a verdict is reached. It will start on October 19th, and afterwards we are expecting no delays like the ones that we've seen now.
Now, Adil, we have seen protests continue. So tell us a bit more about these pro-Morsi protests. Is this an indication that Morsi supporters are prepared for long-term demonstrations despite this state of emergency that's been extended?
Well, they have been sustaining for a month since the evacuation of their camps in Rab al-Adawiyya Square and another square in Cairo. They have been going on every other day or every 3 days for rallies in several parts in the country. So it seems that they have the capability to last, particularly because what we see now is not just people who leave their work and sit in at Rab al-Adawiyya Square. It's basically 1 or 2 hours of a march, mainly at night after working hours. So whoever is supporting the cause will have the time to spare to continue these rallies. But the numbers is a big question. There are many rallies all over the country, but the biggest of them have few thousands of protesters in the rallies itself, as you see in the picture. So basically it says that they will go on, but will their demands change? This is the big question, because after it seems to be there might be a tolerant wave or a more flexible tone for the Muslim Brotherhood. They go back and now demanding the reinstatement of President Mohammed Morsi, which when compared to what is going on by the interim government and their supporters is not an option. So it is still a big debate what will happen, but also what will make the picture clearer is exactly how President Mohammed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood leaders be treated in court. These few days we started to hear that some of them are being released after the prosecution found no evidence for holding them in prison on accusation of inciting violence. So the coming weeks are decisive weeks for the entire country, because they will reveal who will continue in prison or who truly has evidence blaming him or condemning him, and who will get out, and whether any prominent leader that might go out of prison, he might lead another wave of resistance or protest, and therefore might ignite and encourage more people to join.
All right, Adil Mahroui there, getting us up to speed with the latest developments in Cairo. Thanks very much. Now to the Horn of Africa, where sexual violence has long been a serious issue in Somalia. A United Nations report notes that during the first half of this year, 800 cases of sexual and gender-based violence were reported in the capital, Mogadishu alone. Somali women might, however, now be able to fight incidents of sexual assault. A two-day training session organized by the African Union Peacekeeping Force is teaching them vital skills in self-defense.
Trainees in the middle of a session in martial arts. This is a training that enables ladies to defend themselves from their assailants, some of whom may be rapists. It is a training intended for 20 women from the internally displaced persons camps, where rape and abuse of women have been on the rise.
This is an important step. It's necessary to train women so that they can defend themselves. Sometimes it's only one man who rapes a woman, and if she's trained properly, then she can defend herself effectively.
Rape cases have escalated in recent months. The United Nations says it recorded 1,700 cases of rape last year. Internally displaced women and girls are most affected. AMISOM therefore imparts such self-defense training to women. Though AMISOM hopes to empower women in self-defense, the force has recently been accused as well. In a case that sparked outrage among rights groups, AMISOM soldiers have been accused of allegedly abducting and raping a Somali mother of 4. Government soldiers have also been accused of sexually abusing women in camps for the internally displaced. The United Nations said rape and sexual violence is widespread in Somalia, though cases remain largely unreported.
Will enable them to have the skills to train other women in the IDP camps and in other areas to be able to defend themselves against would-be rape.
Here, the two-day training offered practical applications for self-defense and how to contact security agencies for help.
We have learned how we can defend ourselves from rapists. Whether we are asleep in our homes or in a dark street, we now understand the proper moves and how to hit him in the sensitive areas. We will share and train our colleagues on the same.
This was the first such training to be held in Mogadishu as the government struggles to protect women amid calls from rights groups. Mohammed Irmoge, CCTV, Mogadishu.
It's time now for a short break. When we return, at a crossroad, we examine why many youths in Zimbabwe are not ready to take up leadership. And an electronics headache. We tell you how Uganda plans to deal with e-waste management.
You have been charged with murder. How do you plead?
Not guilty.
We are receiving some harsh criticisms.
I therefore salute the Kenyan voters for rejecting that blackmail.
And then saying that ICC is targeting Africa.
Do not make it difficult for us.
This week, Talk Africa delves into Africa's love-hate relationship with the International Criminal Court and poses the question, what next, Africa?
You're watching Africa Live. Now to the crisis in Syria. After 3 days of negotiations in Geneva, there's been a breakthrough in talks between U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov, at a joint press conference earlier on Saturday. The pair announced that they've agreed on a framework for the handover and securing of all chemical weapons in Syria, along with a number of measures to ensure that takes place. Matt Stuttart has the details.
Finally, a breakthrough. Speaking at a joint press conference in Geneva, Kerry and Lavrov outlined a 6-point framework aimed at eliminating all of Syria's chemical weapons stockpiles. The deal specifies that the amount and type of chemical weapons must be published and verified before all weapons are placed under international control. Syria has 1 week to submit a comprehensive listing of its weapons stockpiles to international inspectors. Syria must give inspectors immediate and unfettered access to all sites. All chemical weapons will be destroyed under the terms of the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, or removed from Syrian territory. And the UN will provide logistical support, with compliance enforced under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. The goal is the complete destruction of Syria's chemical weapons stockpiles by the middle of 2014. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov called the breakthrough agreement only the beginning, and gave an assurance that the proposed deal contains nothing about the potential use of military force. He added that the timetable for the handover of chemical weapons will need final approval from the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons.
If we can join together and make this framework a success and eliminate Syria's chemical weapons, we would not only save lives, but we would reduce the threat to the region and reinforce an international standard, an international norm. We could also lay the groundwork for further cooperation that is essential to end the bloodshed that has consumed Syria for more than 2 years. What we agreed on here today could conceivably be the first critical concrete step in that direction.
Now all eyes are on Syria and how the country responds. The world will be waiting to see if it can satisfy the timetable, and most crucially, whether this agreement has any significant impact on the fighting in the country as it enters a 3rd year. Matt Stuttard, CCTV.
Zimbabwe's youth have enjoyed an elevated status in recent years. The government set up several schemes to lend them money to start their own businesses. And more young people are also going into politics. But many feel they still can't fully assume the role of future leaders. CCTV's Farai Mwakatuya has found out why.
There is no shortage of passion or political awareness. Young people here believe they are well educated and capable of solving Zimbabwe's problems. But they still need to do more.
The sense of political direction our country must take still needs to be really taught to our young people. There is division in the youth movement about where Zimbabwe must go. Political parties, particularly at the level of the youth, are not agreed on what Zimbabwe should be.
Several young people have made it into parliament and a few even into the new government. But many young people lack the financial muscle to compete. AC Lumumba has first-hand experience. He was the youngest candidate in the last election, running on a ZANU-PF ticket and narrowly losing out.
Oh, politics is tough, my brother. Politics is not only tough, but it is very expensive. You need to be able to afford playing the game. It's an expensive game.
Despite having the numbers, many aspiring young leaders may not realize their dream anytime soon. Farai Mwakatuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Uganda is seeking to stem the import of second-hand computers and cell phones. Authorities fear they could harm the environment, but traders say the plans could hurt them and their customers. CCTV's Isabel Nakiria has that report from Kampala.
For 12 years, Abdu Katerega has imported and sold used electronic and household items from Europe. He says many Ugandans cannot afford to buy new, so his imports meet an important demand.
Most African countries, basically in Uganda, there is no hire purchase. People have to buy all the items up front. You have to use all the money you have, all your savings, just to buy those items. And going into those quality shops, for example, the Samsung, the Panasonics, is actually expensive depending on what people earn.
Many Ugandans also believe used items from the West are better than new ones.
One day I got an electric shock after using my brand new iron box. I had to go for a used one, which I have been using for 10 years now. In my home, I can't go for new products. I prefer used ones.
But there is a downside. so-called e-waste. A UN report indicates the imports of used goods into Africa are growing 20% every year. In many Western countries, it's cheaper to send old electronic goods to Africa than to recycle them. Several African countries, worried about the environmental impacts, are now seeking to stop the influx. Uganda is among them.
They contain heavy metals such as lead, cadmium, mercury, and chromium. When they get into the environment, they contaminate it, they pollute it, and a human being, upon consuming substances that are contaminated or are polluted with these heavy metals, they cause cancer among several other illnesses.
Kateroga denies that his stock is dangerous.
They're tested because there is a regulation that you're not supposed to bring items that are not tested. And you get a certificate for the container before you ship them down to Africa.
Enforcing the ban also could be difficult. In 2010, Uganda banned the import of used refrigerators, but many second-hand stores still sell them. One proposal under discussion is to impose a levy to raise the prices of used items. Ugandan authorities say they will take a gradual approach to try and lessen the impact on local businesses. Isabel Nakiria, CCTV, Kampala.
Nigeria's government says the country has reserves of iron ore, gold, coal and limestone in which it sees great economic promise. Nigeria is highly dependent on oil, mostly found in the south. Now, in the impoverished north, residents have turned to artisanal mining, regardless of the risks, as they see this as a way out of poverty.
Like almost everything else in Nigeria's economy, mining of metals and other solid minerals fell by the wayside when the West African nation discovered oil. While the country produced in excess of 360,000 ounces of gold before 1954, production has largely ground to a halt since the discovery of oil around 1964. Much of the digging up of Nigeria's minerals has been left to artisanal miners in the largely Muslim north, without high-tech machinery that makes it safe and brings economies of scale.
I come from a poor family. I've been involved in this work for 6 years. My parents cannot afford to pay my school fees, no job. That is why most of us are doing this. I cannot be a farmer as there is no fertilizer. The youth of Bagega are the ones processing here.
The Zamfara mining site is a frontier operation, but still a leap from the artisanal mine shafts in other parts where miners lower themselves hundreds of feet into the earth to chisel gold ore without protection. For many northerners, the neglect of the mining sector, like that of the region's agriculture and cotton mill, is emblematic of the way oil has shifted economic and political power to the largely Christian south, a source of resentment that has fueled conflicts such as a 4-year-old Islamist insurgency.
Honestly, this government has neglected northern part of Nigeria when it comes to economy. There is a lot of economy that's part of economy that not can produce to cover what the south is producing. Because even in the north, what the southerners are always proud of is oil. Even in the north, there is areas that has oil, but the government failed to exploit that oil.
Mines Ministry data obtained by Reuters identifies 7 strategic minerals in which it sees greatest economic promise. Apart from gold, of which the ministry says 300,000 ounces are proven, there are also an estimated 3 billion tons of iron ore, 27 billion barrels of bitumen, 2.2 trillion tons of limestone, 14 million tons of barytes, and about 1 million tons of zinc lead. Proven coal reserves come to 639 million tons and 2.7 billion tons estimated, which the government plans to use for domestic power. Yet, even if Nigeria's precious metals don't live up to their hopes, it has more mundane materials that it wouldn't need to export. Cement is a multi-billion-dollar business in a country of 170 million with a housing shortage. Robert Soy, CCTV.
Still ahead on Africa Live. Don't count me out yet. Johan Cronje sets his sights on Rio 2016 Olympic glory. South Africa's only medalist at the recent Athletics World Championships believes he can compete for a medal at the Rio 2016 Games. That's despite already being 31 years old. Johan Cronje feels he can challenge the likes of Kenya's Asbel Kiprop for gold Now, CCTV's Dan Williams caught up with the athlete.
If medals were handed out for persistence, then Johan Cronje would surely win one. As it is, he managed to win one anyway, picking up a World Championship bronze in the men's 1500 metres. But at the age of 31, after years of injuries and setbacks that included being overlooked for the Olympic squad a year ago, even he thought that his chance had gone.
I had thoughts about quitting racing down the last couple of years. I think the closer, obviously when your national federation doesn't pick you for Olympic Games, then things go through your mind. And this year I just started and thought, listen, there's other goals that I need to achieve first. And it's surreal actually. I don't know how to explain it, but it's still a surprise.
Cronje showed huge promise as a youngster, winning gold at the Commonwealth Games Junior Championships in 2000. His coach never stopped believing that the international recognition would eventually come.
Since we joined as a team in 1997, we know, at that stage we knew we will win sometime or another. We were confident about that. But we didn't think it will take so long to win the medal, eventually in 2013.
That 2013 was going to be a special one for Cronje was evident early in the season after he ran a personal best in the 1500 metres, setting a new national record in the process. The gold in the World Championship final went to Kenya's Asbel Kiprop, an athlete who Cronje has the utmost respect for.
He's, in my eyes, one of the best, if not the best, 1500 runner of all time. Going into a once-off race like a Diamond League where there's pacers, I won't say I will be able to beat them easily. But going into a championship where there's no pacers, where there's 3 rounds, I always have a chance. If I'm in the right position, I can always outsprint any of those guys.
45.
Cronje is now 31, an age when most athletes start considering their retirement. But that's not the case here. He wants to run on to Rio 2016 and perhaps slightly optimistically beyond that.
I would love to go to Olympics where I am fully fit, 100% committed to what I'm going to do there and go there to win a medal.
Whatever happens, 2013 will forever be a year to remember for Cronje. Breaking a national record, winning a medal, and to top it all, becoming a father. But he believes his medal chase is far from over. Dan Williams, CCTV, Bloemfontein, South Africa.
More than 2,000 athletes are competing for the 7th edition of the Francophone Games being held in Nice, France. The athletes and artists from French-speaking nations compete in sports and cultural activities. The Games include wrestling, basketball, cycling, amongst others. And the French President François Hollande was at the opening ceremony, along with other heads of states like Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara and Senegalese leader Macky Sall. 54 countries are participating in the Games. However, athletes from Egypt and Guinea-Bissau are missing from this year's competition. The Games are aimed at bringing together countries which have the use of French language in common. They're organized every 4 years, partly as a counterweight to the Commonwealth Games. Well, that's it for this edition of Africa Live. Now remember, you can stay in touch with us on Twitter using the handle @CCTV News Africa. Also, you can visit our Facebook page, and that's CCTV Africa. I'm Famida Miller. Thanks for watching.